Ryuji Takasu is a lonely loser who lives in a rundown apartment with his mother. He has a resting bully face which makes people avoid him like a plague even though he means them no harm. Despite his looks, he becomes a tongue-tied p*** when he tries to talk to his crush. His life then took a turn for the worse when his crush's best friend became his neighbor, which created the most complicated love triangle in history. The story begins with Ryuji on his way to school when another student bumped into him, but he turns around immediately to complain, and when he sees Ryuji's face, he gets scared and presents his wallet before running off with his friend. When he gets to school, he drops off the wallets with the authorities and goes to check for his name on the notice board outside. However, the students make sure to keep their distance from him because of the crazy look he has on his face, but his friend Yusaku Kitamura approaches him and tells him they will be in the same class. After the opening ceremony, they head to their classroom and are approached by Kushieda Minori, who asks Ryuji if he remembers her, but he is so shy as he struggles to call her name. When she left, Kitamura asked if he was okay and he told him he needed to go to the bathroom. While heading to the bathroom, Ryuji accidentally bumps into Isaka Taiga, a dwarf the size of a Barbie doll with the nickname Palm Top Tiger, which makes everyone around them expect a fight. And while he was trying to figure out why she was called Palm Top Tiger, she punches him. Later in class, Ryuji discovers that the Palm Top Tiger was friends with Minori, and Kitamura comes to tell him his misunderstanding was cleared by some of his previous classmates. After school, Ryuji goes to the classroom to get his bag, after returning from the teacher's room and finds Taiga trashing the place. He tries to get his bag, but Taiga starts to freak out, claiming that she had gotten the seats mixed, and fights him for his bag. However, she loses her grip when she sneezes, so she calls him an idiot, while leaving embarrassed. Back at home, Ryuji discovers a love letter from Taiga to Kitamura in his bag, which makes him understand why she was so keen on getting his bag. He's tempted to read the letter but realizes the Smurf-looking klutz didn't even put the letter in the envelope. Later that night, Ryuji is woken by a noise in the apartment, and since his mother is yet to be home, he decides to check it out. He finds the balcony door open and sees Taiga's reflection appear, but when he turns around, she attacks him with a wooden sword. He avoids getting hit for a bit, and Taiga misses a strike to his face which damages the door, but she tries again. So Ryuji shouts that the envelope is empty, which makes her stop her attack and collapse from hunger. Ryuji ends up feeding Taiga and asks if her parents feed her because of how she stuffed her face, but then decides it was none of his business. He tries to make peace with Taiga and shows her a box of things he did for the girl he likes, which includes poems and mini discs of songs he made. She finds a notebook in the box and discovers the girl Ryuji likes is Minori, her best friend. Ryuji sees that it's almost morning and asks her to leave because his sicko mom will be back soon, but Taiga refuses, so he's forced to promise to help her write a proper love letter and manages to send her off. The next morning, while making breakfast, Ryuji gets a call from Taiga, who screams into the phone as soon as he picks up, causing him to hang up immediately, but she calls back and asks him to come outside. Ryuji does as he is told and is surprised to see Taiga standing by the window of the new apartment close to him. Taiga asks him to come over and threatens to tell Minori about his feelings if he refuses, but gives him a few minutes to finish making breakfast. When Ryuji reaches her apartment, he finds the door already open and is greeted by a foul stench and pile of garbage with hardly any furniture in the apartment. Ryuji finds Taiga still asleep and decides to clean the place. When Taiga wakes up, she is amazed to see her apartment clean with breakfast on her small table, courtesy of Ryuji. She sits down and starts to eat without the traditional thanks, as pointed out by Ryuji, but rather than give satisfaction to Ryuji, she decides to thank the god of rice and manufacturers for the meal. The following day, because of Ryuji's promise to Taiga, she starts developing a habit of coming to his house for breakfast, and also has him make her lunches because it seems the midget doesn't know how to cook. On the way to school, they run into Minori, who starts to misunderstand their relationship, but Taiga claims they only met by coincidence since they live close to each other, making Ryuji realize that to get closer to Minori, he'll first have to get Taiga and Kitamura together. During gym class, they plan to pair up and have Ryuji throw a basketball at Kitamura's partner, which would cause them to be taken to the infirmary and leave Kitamura and Taiga without a partner. But this backfires when Ryuji hits Taiga while she is distracted. The next plan involved Taiga giving Kitamura some cookies she baked during home economics class, but they noticed Kitamura rushing somewhere, so Taiga had to chase after him. While running, she accidentally slips on the stairs, but Ryuji catches her, but she ends up throwing the cookies out the window. Later in the day, Taiga is depressed because she feels she can't succeed. So Ryuji tries to make her feel better by eating all the ruined cookies and says they are delicious even though they taste like Sandman's ass. The next day, rumors begin to spread about Ryuji and Taiga, and their classmates start to believe they are together because of the amount of time they are seen spending together. The rumors quickly spread to Minori, so she takes them to the rooftop and asks Ryuji to take care of Taiga, but when they try to explain the misunderstanding, they hear Kitamura clapping as he has also misunderstood the situation. After school, they are both heartbroken, and Taiga apologizes to Ryuji because she feels responsible for the situation. She then explains that she had been living alone because she didn't get along with her parents and had felt at home at his house. She feels that no one understands her and takes her frustrations out on a light pole by kicking it multiple times. Ryuji joins her, and their banging eventually causes the pole to arch. This small victory against the pole causes the shrimp to feel better, so she decides to confess her feelings to Kitamura. She tells Ryuji that his services as a dog are over and bids him farewell, leaving behind her lunchbox. The next day, Taiga doesn't come over for breakfast, and when Ryuji sees her at school, she doesn't speak with him. Upon entering the class, he sees it has been turned upside down by the miniature Lego-looking runt, who tells everyone they weren't a couple. Minori apologizes to Ryuji for the misunderstanding, and Taiga calls Kitamura outside to confess to him, but while speaking, she compliments Ryuji for some reason without even realizing it. Kitamura ends up friend-zoning her and tries to become Ryuji's wingman instead. But Ryuji, who had been overhearing everything, appears after Kitamura leaves and asks Taiga what she was going to do. She reveals she is going home, and he offers to make her dinner, but she claims not to want his help anymore. However, Ryuji feels he can't leave her alone and decides that he's not a dog, but a dragon, as he claims that dragons are equal to tigers, so he'll continue to be by her side. All this said, he calls her by her first name unknowingly, which shocks Taiga, and the only way she can think of responding is by kicking him. Even though she switched into mood again and called him a dog, she's secretly happy and satisfied that he called her by her first name. Some days later, Ryuji and Taiga are walking to school when they hear Minori cheering for her teammates during baseball practice. They stop to watch, and Ryuji begins to admire Minori, but he is poked in the eyes by the dwarf, who tells him to stop giving her friend a lewd look and calls him a dog. Kitamura walks up to Minori, and when they both see Taiga drop-kicking Ryuji, they smile. In class, Ryuji notices Minori doing her version of Pimp My Ride, but with the phone's impression, and she asks Ryuji if she can also pimp his phone, but he blushes and declines. Later that day, Taiga takes Ryuji to Johnny's for dinner since his rice cooker had gone bad, and there Ryuji finds out that Minori works part-time. On the way home, he compliments Minori's smile, but Taiga is disgusted, as the look on his face made her want to buff her guts out, so she goes on to hit him. The next morning, Ryuji and Taiga are on their way to Johnny's because he wants to see Minori again, but they meet one of his mom's customers in front of his shop, and to their surprise, Minori is a part-timer at his shop. The man then asks Taiga if she would also like to work for him as he is short on staff, but before she can answer, Ryuji says that both of them would work for him instead. Taiga is sent to make some deliveries with a bicycle, while Ryuji offers to help Minori in the storage room, but they are mistakenly locked inside. Taiga, who just got back from her deliveries, runs into Kitamura, who compliments her for having learned how to ride a bike properly, as he had been observing her for a year. She's motivated to keep riding the bike because of the compliment she got from Kitamura, and returns to the shop but can't find any of her friends, and thinks that Ryuji had been slacking off in comfort while she was out working, so she rushes out to go look for him. Meanwhile, Ryuji and Minori try stacking boxes to get out through the window, but as Ryuji gets close to the window, he finds Taiga looking back at him through the window. She jumps in to attack him and breaks the window in the process, causing the ladder she used to get up to fall, which meant that they were screwed. Sometime later, Ryuji goes to Taiga's place and finds her asleep, so he wakes her up and tells her to wash her face before he goes to warm up breakfast. He then decides to do the laundry and clean up when he finds a box with a blurry photo album of Kitamura. But Taiga finds him, and before she can get mad, he tells her that he can take Kitamura's pictures for her. Later on in school, as they discuss in the locker room how many pictures to take, Kitamura shows up and greets them, but Taiga embarrasses herself while trying to greet back in an old-fashioned way. In class right before assembly, Taiga sees some girls talking with Kitamura and gets jealous, while at the assembly she gets jealous of the student council president when she sees Kitamura trying to correct her. She then tries to pick a fight with the president, but Kitamura ends up stopping her. Later during class, Taiga seemed happy as Ryuji observed her thinking she was depressed because of the incident at the assembly. During break time, Ryuji brought her lunch, but she tried to reject it because she felt bad for being rude to Kitamura with the little stunt she pulled at the assembly ground. Kitamura and Minori then walk up to them and decide to join them for lunch, which makes them nervous but happy at the same time. Kitamura praises Taiga's lunch, but she's too tense and points at Ryuji when asked if she made it herself. Ryuji tries to save the situation by telling them he likes making lunch for some pocket money, the same way Minori decorated phones. Fortunately, they buy the lie but are unable to finish lunch as they have club meetings, so they leave. Ryuji then scolds Taiga for almost giving away the fact that he makes food for her, which may lead to another rumor. Later, while Ryuji cleans the bathroom, Taiga interrupts him and forces him to come take pictures of Kitamura as he plays baseball, but she's impatient and takes the pictures herself, which makes Ryuji understand why the pictures came out blurry. Later on, they go to Ryuji's apartment, and he asks her to pick her favorite photo so he can get it laminated. But for some reason, she leaves annoyed. A while later, Taiga is at Ryuji's once more and she's blaming him for her boredom, but he reminds her that she was the one who didn't get to meet Kitamura before the holidays began, and tells her that even though she met him, she would have ended up lagging like an outdated iPhone instead of speaking properly. This pisses her off, so she spills soup on her dress, which Ryuji offers to help clean in exchange for accompanying him to Johnny's. The next day, they go to Johnny's and find out that Minori has taken the day off. However, they see a famous model, Ami Kawashima, who shows up with Kitamura, and he introduces Ami as a former childhood friend of his before joining Ryuji and Taiga at the table. Ami seems to have a kind and clumsy demeanor even though she is a famous model and actress. But when Ryuji and Kitamura leave the table for the bathroom, Kitamura stops Ryuji, and together they spy on the girls. While watching them, they see Ami try to boss Taiga around and then make fun of her size, which ticks Taiga off, leading her to slap the two-faced hag, claiming there was a fly on her face. The boys then return after watching everything that had happened, and both parties decide to leave. Taiga and Ryuji return to his apartment, and Taiga seems to be eating with anger while ranting about how Ami was a bitch and hopes to never see her again. To their surprise the next day, Ami is transferred into their class. Ami's fake personality quickly wins over her classmates, but Taiga doesn't seem too pleased. Kitamura speaks with Ryuji and states that although he doesn't mind Ami's personality, he would prefer if his childhood friend would act normally that way. Everyone could get used to the real her. Back in class, Ami sees Ryuji walking out to go get a drink from the vending machine and decides to follow to apologize for the misunderstanding she had with Taiga. After listening to her, he gets the gist of it and accepts her apology before returning to class. Taiga and Minori, who had noticed that he'd been speaking with Ami, passed him notes during class to express their displeasure. At the end of the day, Taiga waits in the classroom for Ryuji, but then Ami arrives and sees her there. She makes fun of Taiga as they have now become enemies. They argue a bit as Taiga warns Ami that she can't keep up her act for too long. Ami then reveals that she had explained everything that happened at Johnny's to Kitamura, and that she had made him hate her for what she did to her. Later that night, Ryuji notices Taiga is late for dinner, so he goes over to her apartment to see what the problem is. He finds her upset over Ami's words, so he comforts her by letting her know that Ami has not sabotaged her yet, because Kitamura is already aware of Ami's true personality. They then go buy some sauce, and on their way back they see Ami sneaking around in a disguise with lots of junk food, which leaves Taiga with an interesting realization. The next day at school, Taiga and Minori pounce on Ami trying to reveal her flabs and that she is a glutton who eats lots of junk food. But Ami counterattacks, shedding crocodile tears so real she could win an Oscar for her performance. Later that day on the rooftop, while Ryuji, Taiga, and Minori are having a drink, they see a boy with a camera sneaking around their school gates. While on their way home, Ami suddenly rushes to grab Ryuji to hide from the boy with the camera. But Taiga is ticked off because her presence was ignored by Ami and throws a trash can, which misses its target and hits the camera boy instead. Ami then asks Ryuji if she could stay at his place until the stalker leaves, but Taiga volunteers her apartment instead because it's much higher in quality and more secure. Although they're enemies, Taiga gives Ami refreshments while she is at her place. The next day, Ami looks all worn out as she reveals that for 6 hours Taiga made her act out several famous people. Later on, Kitamura approaches Ryuji and Taiga at the vending machine and asks Taiga if she could help Ami make true friends at school. The two who are aware of her personality agree, and Taiga goes on to blackmail Ami into having lunch with them. At lunch, Ami wonders why Taiga and Ryuji have the same lunch side dishes, but Taiga doesn't give Ryuji the time to explain and eats all his side dishes. They later volunteer to clean the neighborhood, and Taiga hopes to work with Kitamura, but is disappointed to be grouped with Ami, who picks up a bottle cork and compares it to Taiga's pint-sized bottle stature. The peep squeak in return compares Ami to a trash bag and says even trash would rather burn than be next to her. Fed up, Taiga takes Minori and ditches the grouping arrangement, so Ryuji and Ami end up cleaning the river, where she steps on mud. When a toad hops on her shoe, she almost reveals her true personality by complaining, and quickly tries to cover it up. But Ryuji reveals that he knew the whole time and tells her to drop the strawberry shortcake act. As it begins to rain, Ami notices her stalker from a distance, so she grabs Ryuji before going to hide. She then reveals that it was because she was being stalked that she had to transfer schools. And while she was still talking, Taiga and Minori ran into the stalker while looking for them. The stalker begins to take pictures of the surfboard Loli, but is threatened by her and is chased down. This inspires Ami to have a change of heart and be brave enough to face her stalker, while revealing her true personality. She runs after them and catches up with the stalker to beat him up and destroy his camera, frightening the stalker, which makes him run away. Ryuji soon catches up to her to see the situation taken care of, and then commends her for being brave. He then takes her back to his apartment to get a change of clothes from rain-drenched ones, but she tries to get freaky with him only to be interrupted when Taiga suddenly shows up. The next morning, Ryuji tries to explain to Taiga that Ami is just messing with her. In class, the teacher informs the students that the pool is open and everyone is excited and happy about the news. However, Taiga seems to be the opposite. Meanwhile, Ryuji and Minori take Taiga to a swimsuit store, but she gets mad when she sees Ami there. Ami teases her with a child swimsuit, saying since she hasn't achieved puberty yet, so it would fit her nicely. The girls later go to try on some swimsuits, and Ami tries to impress Ryuji by picking a fancy swimsuit, but he ignores her to go help Taiga, who seems to be having trouble picking a swimsuit for herself. Taiga soon gives in to depression for the rest of the day, and Ryuji later figures out that she can't swim because she's self-conscious of her non-existent plots, and that she was always made fun of by other students at the pool. So Ryuji decides to help her make firm-sized pads to help her situation. The following day, Ami uses her charms and nice body to impress the other students, and teases Taiga's plot when she arrives, but is shocked by the plot plates. Ryuji and Taiga are relieved as their plan to make Taiga's plot convincing is working perfectly. But when the other students begin to throw other students into the pool, Ami uses this opportunity to throw Taiga in. Taiga calls for help as she cannot swim, and both Ami and Ryuji realize this and try to help her, but as Ryuji tries to pull her out of the pool, she doesn't agree to go with him as one of her plot plates begins to drift away, so Ryuji then grabs it quickly and fills up the empty slot while saving her. Ami later apologizes that evening for tossing Taiga into the pool, but makes fun of the little girl for not knowing how to swim. Since her apology seems half-hearted, Taiga argues with her until Minori appears and tells them to settle their differences through sports. The following day, Minori announced the competition between Taiga and Ami for a 50-meter swimming race. During class, Ryuji gets a note that's filled with the conversations of the whole class on how Ami and Taiga are fighting over him. At the pool, Ryuji teaches Taiga how to swim, but she's embarrassed as the whole class is watching and making side comments, and gets shy when Kitamura comes by to give his support. Meanwhile, Ryuji puts Taiga on a diet and gives her swimming tips. Some days go by, and one rainy day, the pool isn't available for practice, which pisses Taiga off, but Kitamura shows up with 2 tickets to a public swimming pool and gives her and Ryuji as they weren't going to have another swimming class for the rest of the week. The next day, they take advantage of the clear weather and practice swimming. Ryuji finds out that Taiga's strength makes her good at swimming, so he figures out she has a chance at winning, but then suddenly it starts to rain. While they wait for the rain to stop, Taiga gets upset when Ryuji tells her that it was okay, even if she lost, that it'll all be settled if he goes with Amy on the vacation. She then leaves after kicking over the table and doesn't go to Ryuji's place for dinner. The following day, Ryuji hands Taiga her lunch on their way to school. Later on, the match was about to begin, but Taiga was nowhere to be found at first. Soon, the race starts and Taiga throws Ami into the pool and takes off her bra in an attempt to slow Ami down. But Ami quickly wears it back and tries to catch up, but then Taiga gets a leg cramp, so Ryuji dives in and tries to help her with a little boost. Meanwhile, the boys come flying into the pool, hitting Ryuji and knocking him out underwater. Taiga sees this and rushes to save him as she gets him out of the water and prevents everyone from touching him while claiming he was hers while crying. Ryuji was plagued with a horrible dream where he is being ordered around like a dog, but soon wakes up and goes to the veranda for fresh air. But when he gets there, he sees Taiga, who tells him she had a horrible dream where her husband was a dog. They later leave to meet up with their friends at the station, but the group is excited to go to the beach house together, so they act funny. On the train, Taiga and Ami start to argue and hurl insults at themselves, which makes Ryuji tell them to try and get along. Taiga then gives Minori some horror music to listen to, so Ryuji can see that Minori gets scared easily, since they plan to use her fears to get Ryuji to be her knight in shining armor during the vacation. They make it to Ami's beach house, and when the group goes to check out the beach, Ryuji finds himself cleaning the house due to his OCD. Meanwhile, Taiga is still trying to frighten Minori with seaweed as they are on the beach, while Ami asks Kitamura if leaving his student council duties and coming on the trip is okay, and he tells her that it's fine. Later on, Kitamura asks Ryuji to go shopping, and Ryuji suggests he take Taiga instead, but she refuses, so he takes Minori instead, giving Ryuji and Taiga a chance to find a place to carry out their scare plan. Ryuji wanders around the house and accidentally walks in on Ami in the bathroom, but she is just cleaning and teases him. For dinner, Ryuji makes curry for the group and makes it extra spicy since it was requested by Minori, but even though they all feel the burn, they enjoy the food. After dinner, Ami tries to talk to Ryuji, but is disappointed when he goes to talk to Minori by the balcony instead. He tries to ask if she has a boyfriend, but Minori asks if he has ever seen a ghost, and explains to him that ghosts don't exist, so she'll never see one in her life. She then tells him that there is no answer to his question. Later on, Taiga and Ryuji talk about their scare plan as they are disappointed with the lack of results. They are shocked when they return to their rooms and see strange things, along with hearing knocks on the door and window which freaks them out. Hei talked about carrying on with the plan to scare Minori. They are startled by Kitamura, who figures out that they have been behind what Minori had fretted over the day before, but Taiga explains they were only trying to make her have fun since she is a fan of horror. Kitamura eventually decides to join in on the scare plot and says he'll include Ami as she has a knack for this kind of stuff. Later on, Minori helped Ryuji make breakfast and lunch for everyone, and while they complimented each other, Ami was eavesdropping from behind the wall. As they get ready for the beach party, they don't see Ami, which makes Ryuji go look for her. Upon finding her in her room, Ryuji sees her admiring her body, so she tries to seduce him and tries to make him tell her his reason for trying to scare Minori, or she wouldn't help. Kitamura realizes Ami won't help, so he goes up to set up the traps in the cave himself. Ami then brings up the idea of going to the cave with Minori, as she claimed it was her best spot, and then takes everyone to a cave. While in the cave, they find that Kitamura's traps are idiotic and not scary. When Ryuji touches something slimy which Minori notices and gets scared, Ryuji recognizes the slime from last night's terror and tells Taiga who gets scared and rushes to hug Minori. Ami then decides to follow another route, but Ryuji follows her on their way, and she teases him a lot when they suddenly hear a scream that sounds like Minori's. They run to join Kitamura and Minori. When Kitamura reveals that something took Minori, they begin to hear a weird noise, and Kitamura runs to go save Minori, but also yells. The strange noise is then heard again, which makes Taiga go after it with the plan of beating it, but upon reaching, she finds out that it was all set by Kitamura and Minori. Back at the house, Minori explains that when she noticed their amateur attempts on trying to scare her, she cooked up a plan with Kitamura to show them how it's done. Later that night, they played with fireworks on the beach, and Ryuji talked with Ami, explaining why he was so keen on Minori, but then she showed up and apologized to him for the scare. She asks him what led him to want to scare her, and he tells her that Taiga gave him the idea that she was a scaredy cat. He then tries to confess his feelings to her, but Minori quickly changes the topic. However, Ryuji claims he won't give up that easily. After summer break, school resumes, and as Ryuji and Taiga approach the building, they meet Minori and the idiot Haruta, who says he's looking forward to the cultural festival. Later on during gym class, as he watches the girls play basketball, Ryuji recalls his conversation with Minori about UFOs, but his thoughts are cut short by Taiga and Ami, who throw the ball at him as they start arguing with each other. The other male students start picking sides as they watch them, but Ryuji just keeps quiet. When they return to the locker room, Haruta announces he has a plan for the upcoming cultural festival. He proposes to the other male students that their class organize a maid cafe so they can get to see the girls in cute outfits. One of the students suggests they make the girls wear Chinese outfits instead of the regular maid outfits and ask Ryuji what he thinks about it. Instead of answering, he begins to imagine what Minori and Taiga would look like dressed up in Chinese attire. He's pleased with his vision of Minori, but when he sees Taiga, he immediately comes back to his senses and suggests the girls dress as something else, which causes the creeps to start yelling different suggestions until Kitamura suggests they do a cosplay cafe. That way, they get to dress up in whatever they want, and everyone's wish could be granted. Later on, as Ryuji is walking to class, Taiga approaches him and shoves her gym trousers in his face and blames Ami for ripping it. Ami joins them and tells her to stop spreading lies, saying it wasn't her fault she had 2 left feet, which caused her to trip and rip her trousers. The two soon start bickering, but Ryuji stops them and tells Taiga he'd mend the rip, causing Ami to call her an over-pampered brat. The two leave, and as he watches them go, Minori appears, and before she can walk away, he asks her about the UFO conversation, but she brushes him off. After school at Ryuji's house, he mends Taiga's clothes while she reads a magazine on the floor. As the two talk, Taiga gets a call from her father, but she ignores it because she believes her father abandoned her and doesn't care for her. The next day at school, they hold a meeting in class to pick a candidate for the school's beauty pageant, and the guys insist that Ami be the one. But she tells them she is to be the MC so she can participate and suggests they give the role to Taiga. Taiga refuses and argues until Kitmaru tells her it isn't a bad idea, so the simp agrees. They then move on to the class exhibition, and the guys begin their plan to make the class agree to the cosplay cafe. Soon, the class begins to argue, and Minori stands up shyly and tries to suggest a haunted house. But she's so scared that she can't form clear sentences and gets a nosebleed. Seeing that they could not agree on anything, Haruta makes everyone write down their suggestions and place them in a bag. He then puts his hand into the bag and pulls out a folded paper. But to his surprise, he had picked a pro wrestling suggestion, which was a suggestion from their teacher. Later on, while in a convenience store, Taiga finds out that her account has been zeroed by her father. He calls her again, but she ignores him and sends Ryuji to meet him in her place. He ends up meeting her father, who explains to him that he will be getting a divorce soon and would want to live together with his daughter. Ryuji later talks to Taiga and tells her that her father wants to live with her, but she refuses his offer. The next day, Haruta shares scripts with the class for the pro wrestling show, and while Taiga protests against the script and the role she's to play, Ami quickly acts on and makes her protest look like they have already started rehearsals. Kitamura then comes in to inform them that the class with the best exhibit wins 4 awesome prizes. Later that evening, Ryuji and Taiga were headed home when they saw Taiga's father waiting for her, but she kicked him between the legs and walked towards Ryuji's apartment. Ryuji tries to talk some sense into her before realizing that he wasn't even acting for her sake. But Taiga had already realized his frustration, so she goes on to talk to her old man. Days go by, and it is soon time for the school festival, so everyone is working hard and preparing for their presentation. After school, Ryuji and Taiga are walking home when they see her father's car parked in front of her apartment, as he has come to take her to dinner, which makes Ryuji happy that her father is trying to make an effort to make it up to his daughter. The next day, Taiga gives Ami a chocolate present as a bribe to switch roles with her for the pro wrestling play. But Minori overhears this and is shocked as she finds out from Ryuji that it's because her father is coming to watch her perform. Minori gets mad and argues with Ryuji, ignorance, which makes him leave with anger, as he doesn't know why Taiga's best friend wouldn't support her. Amy then goes to Ryuji and makes small talk with him to cheer him up. Later that night, Ryuji learns from his mother that Taiga would be moving out and that she was able to talk to Taiga's father, who was moving her things out of the apartment. Taiga returns home and speaks to Ryuji from her window, telling him to apologize and make up with Minori. The next day in school, everyone lines up to watch the pro wrestling show, and backstage, Taiga goes to get ready, but she's startled by Ryuji's ugly makeup and scolds him. He explains he decided to try his best as the bad guy in the play since he caused trouble yesterday, but Taiga reminds him to apologize to Minori. The play begins, and it seems to be going well as it attracts so many students. Taiga and Ryuji play the roles of the villains on the stage, but during the play, their teacher loses it when she sees a scene in the play and tries to interrupt the play, forgetting it was just an act, but she is carried off by the cast of the play. Meanwhile, Minori plays the role of a wise mentor and throws a question at the audience. In the end, the play climaxes with a fight between Taiga and Ami, which makes the audience love the performance even more. The play succeeds, and as the class takes a break for their next act for the festival, they find out the other classes ended up presenting the cosplay cafes. While chilling together with Ryuji, Taiga, who was on her phone, Kitamura took a bite out of her crepe, which made her embarrassed. Later on, Ryuji and Taiga were taking a stroll when he noticed she's been on her phone for a while and wondered if it was because she didn't receive any message or call from her dad, who was supposed to come to watch her play the lead of their show. This leaves Taiga worried, and she doesn't end up taking the protagonist role in the play. Make sure to subscribe and comment down below, Small Melons, if you watched till the end.